So we'll obviously talk at length about the film and of course the music, but first of all, can you take us back to the sort of genesis of the project and how you started working on it?
Often I come up with my own ideas for a film, but this time I didn't. The BBC and one of the producers, Heather Crowell, came to me and said, we've got a project, we've got a title, Atomic, but we've got a band, Mogwai. And as soon as I heard band, Mogwai, I thought, oh right, I have to do this. I was very, very busy, but the chance of working with Mogwai, it was a kind of dream. And after that, it was up to me in a way to come up with what it would look like. Also they had a style which was great. This is part of a series of films, collaborations between filmmakers and musicians, and the style sheet says no commentary and only archive footage, which is fantastic and scary because you have to keep people interested for a relatively long time, 75 or so minutes. You need to have a structure, something that feels as if you're moving on. You want the audience to feel as if they're not just in a sort of kaleidoscope, and so you have to try and tell a story without commentary, etc. And so it's a challenge to a filmmaker, but exciting. And also I'm of an age that remembers the nuclear age. I remember having nightmares about it those times, and so it was very relevant, and of course kind of political relevance as well.
So by the time the BBC approached you, they already had a band on board,
Yes.
you're saying, which means, Barry, at which point were Mogwai featured, and did the BBC come to you as well about this? Or?
I think we got given a few of the sort of rough cuts and stuff like that.
No, you were on before.
No, but I'm saying,
before there was a single frame.
Mogwai were the band.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I vaguely.
Before there was anything. Yeah.
I do vaguely remember speaking to Stuart Braithwaite maybe last January, and he mentioned that there was something in the ether.
Yeah.
But it seemed to be but it did seem to be. I kind of love the sense of vagueness from a romantic sort of onlooker looking in at art being created point of view.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously the BBC must have come to you guys, had this project.
Or Crossover, would it have been Crossover? Yeah, so there was this production company, Crossover, who's overseen a lot of these collaborations, and maybe they came to use first. The BBC were part of that, so the BBC wouldn't have been the headline approach, but it was more looking for a theme, and also I should have said, sorry, I forgot to say, Nicola, that there was also a requirement that it would in some way relate to Hiroshima. It was the 70th anniversary of Hiroshima, so that it was an exciting thing to do as well.
So there were quite a lot of parameters, if not restrictions, in terms of you being given a text. You're also being given an album title by virtue of that, Barry, which I'm guessing is quite rare. Were you given any musical parameters the same way that Mark was in terms of the film?
When we work with people, we're generally given trust that we're going to come up with something that they like, or whatever. There's not many people who are coming and interfere with what we want to do, and it was the same case with Mark. He just sort of let us get on with it, and we just fit pieces of music into our,
Yeah, I remember I was getting lots of emails from you in particular, sketches of things, and it was before you'd seen anything, so it was just here's something, see where that fits. And before tonight I looked back through the emails that Barry and I had with each other, and around March you started sending me sketches of things, and quite a few of them ended up in the finished film, quite a few of them, and particularly the cosmonaut piece, where it goes boom, 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 it's a very bouncy piece. That came from you really early on, it hasn't changed very much.
That's interesting.
But it wasn't written to picture.
For that piece.
No, that's we've got.
You didn't look at it. Quite a lot of it was not written to picture, and very occasionally a piece that maybe was intended for one bit, we used it elsewhere. So there's a bit, the Cuban Missile Crisis bit, and there's a bit of sort of tinkle, but there's a lot of guitar in that. And I think that was intended for earlier in the picture, but we slid it along to Cuba, and there was a lot going on visually, and it kind of worked there, and so we just thought, go with that, And you have to keep that, the relationship, I think, between the image and the music is like call and response. You have to do your bit, where you are, and it's back into you, and you try and get that call and response if possible.
I love that idea of symbiosis, because perhaps it's a simplistic view, you get this idea that the film is all but made and then the band come in and maybe kind of compose around it, but if anything it sounds like the narrative of the actual film.
I mean, that would be
reflected.
that would be an ideal position. Where there's never any time to do that, you know.
Never happens.
Like no one's ever sent us like a finished movie or film and then went, do you want to make the music for that? And it never works like that. So you've always got to have a sort of bank of songs that you maybe have written, or just, you know, you get given the sort of mood of what the things happening in the film, and you try and write around that, but it has to be done quite quickly, and it's difficult, but it's a lot of fun.
And also, you know what you say, that would be the ideal. In the old way in Hollywood, in Hollywood was you shoot the picture, you lock it, and then the composer, the musicians come along and write the music after it's locked, almost as if the cake's made, and then you put the icing on top of it, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, in the music world, you know, you've got, if you're making a music video, you've got the song, and then you add the imagery after. But I actually think that the best is neither of those, where each is evolving, you know.
Yeah.
So we did our picture bit, then you gave us music, we cut the picture to the music, so the picture shifted and back, and then you get, if it works, then you get this sort of relay race that happens.
Yeah.
And they're both so inherent to each other. I think that's, you know, you almost can't separate them. And it's also interesting because as a musician, it means that you're having much more of an impact on the creation of a film, if you like, than reflecting it afterwards or reacting to what's there as well. I mean, as you say, it's interesting that you were at least contacted at the same time about this, because both creative inputs were obviously key to the finished product. I mean, did you have, when you gave Mark those sketches that became kind of key moments, I'm wondering what did you have ideas or memories or you know, a nuclear imagery in your mind?
Of course, you're not going to be sitting thinking you're going to be making something really chipper.
Yes.
It's not. We're not very good at that anyway. But yeah, you were just thinking about, like, you know, we knew the themes of the movie were going to keep saying it, so it's a bad part of it. The themes of the film, and we knew that it was going to be something that we'd be quite good at, or at least we thought we would anyway. And it just was in line with everything that we've done before. It was I'd like to say it was a natural choice for us to work together, but
Yeah, it felt
it was good.
There's also obviously the fact that within the film there are wonderful moments of brightness in the music, and there are elements of hope within the footage. But obviously there is a lot of very dreadful music, which interestingly is sometimes matched with lighter. Dread-filled, I said, not dreadful. Much better written down. And often that's in the lighter. I'm thinking about that scene early on, and you're in Japan, and it's the cherry blossoms, and it's this very romanticised, quite comforting idea.
That was the first piece that he sent me.
Is that right?
Piece that you sent.
Was it?
Yeah, and do you remember I said I love it? It's a bit too fast.
That's right.
And you slowed it down.
we just slowed it
And
down.
you sent it half speed, and it worked. And am I allowed to say what you sent us? Do you remember what you sent?
Was it Happy Hardcore when you sent it?
Can I say it?
You go for it.
You sent me, because I said this is quite. Sort of, I love it, but it's a bit fast. And you sent me a link to a Justin Bieber track that had been slowed down like 1,000% or something. And it sounded like the death of the dinosaurs or something. And it was fantastic. And then you slowed this track down, this track that you referred to, and it really fitted.
Yeah.
It's that wonderful kind of, it's just that sense of foreboding. It's never heavy-handed, but I did not discern the Bieber influence. Forgive me for that. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the music that's going along with these different scenarios, and I just say the kind of like Milton kind of passages, Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, the music's really striking, but so is the silence. The use of silence is really, really striking as well. There's a bit quite early on where you think it's silent and then there's really nothing, which, you know, is that as much part of the soundtrack as the music?
Yeah, there's that section where the bombs are actually going off, and then it's just a few bells, because you can already imagine what that sounds like. You don't have to see it again, and you know, lots of films have done that before, but we thought it would be a really good idea just to have almost silence, just so that you could reflect on it, and it works really well. That part of the bells.
I think so. There's like a tinkle.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost and like a little bit of metal touching, you know. And then, as you say, it goes totally silent. You know? It's like you want to, you know, sometimes, I'm not religious at all, but if you go into a church, sometimes there's this kind of, you hold your breath because there's something, you know, sacred there. And you want it almost to be a prayer for these people who
very much so.
died.
I think there's a bit where a woman has lost her son, and she speaks of fact that he doesn't even come to her in dreams. And
it's
that utter nothingness,
Yeah.
and that's reflected in the music as well. It's a really kind of striking, frightening element to it. In terms of the titles, Barry, because what you've got is you've got the film, and you say you've got the kind of Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained sort of. There's a few quotes. There are some bookends, but then you've almost got this not narrative, but there are almost chapters if you look down the track titles.
Yeah.
Did you come up with them? Were they kind of loose?
They were just sort of like, they were things like, it was all things related to the sort of development of nuclear weapons, and Pripyat was one of them as well at the time, much like Chernobyl, and what was next to Chernobyl, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Ghost Town.
I'm going there actually at the
Good
beginning
for
of
you.
May.
Yeah. But yeah, it was all, and stuff like the names of the bombs as well. We just thought it'd be quite, we didn't want to start putting stupid Mogwai titles on there because honestly it would be very serious, and we wanted to be for once quite serious.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, was it a different approach,
Yeah.
even to something like Zidane or L'Revenant, where you're very much so soundtracking, but
No, we were aware that it was very serious. Like, it was the most serious thing we've ever done, and we couldn't start messing about with daft titles. So
no, that's it.
it's as simple as that. Obviously, yeah, we wouldn't be raging if we'd started calling daft stuff anyway. So.
Bieber's one thing, funny titles another. Did you, when you're working on something like that from a sort of musician's point of view and as a composer's point of view, and it's so intense, did you only work on that for a fixed period, and how long was that period of time?
Yeah, that was all we did for a while. We tend to do it, we're not very good at multitasking anyway, but you know, I think when we do something like that, we really have to put sort of heart and soul into it, and we really just concentrated on it, and yeah, hopefully you can tell.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly my point. It's the with you, Mark. It's like I can't imagine you kind of dotting around, doing a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of social media, and then kind of getting into something like even Ether, which is, you know, the signal, if you like, the pop song.
Yeah.
It just seems
So
that you'd be so poppy.
I remember when you were doing the Ether, I popped into the studio that day, and you were saying a major chord.
See,
Mogwai.
now it's a single. It's obvious.
That's all you have to do. Just like a major chord.
It's lovely, that little arpeggio thing you do at the top. It's lovely.
How long was the actual period of making the film and making the music? Like, what's the actual time period of this?
It was quite quick. On my side of things, we started editing. It was about 3 months, something like that, of actual editing time, I'd say.
That's compared to.
And in fact, of actual editing time, no, much less.
Yeah.
Like probably 12 days or something, but you watching it in about 3 months.
And Barry, what about you?
It didn't take us very long. I'm not really sure. Is Tony there? How long did it take us, Tony?
12 days.
12 days, yeah, so we had to do it really quickly. And again, I don't even live here, so I have to come over and record it and then go home again. So yeah, we had to do it really quickly. But I think, to be honest, the band really works well under pressure, and we like deadlines, and it's the best way for us to work, so probably got the best out of us doing it that way.
How has it worked when you've worked on other soundtracks before? I remember Zidane with it, and I spoke to Stuart Braithwaite and Douglas Gordon at the time, and one of the things Stuart said was that for you guys, the sort of guiding principle in a lot of these soundtrack things is not to get in the way of them.
Exactly
not to,
right.
Is that the same with this?
Exactly, yeah, exactly the same. I think that the two projects we've enjoyed the most have been that, and Atomic and Zidane, because we were just trusted to get on with it, and it just works out better. If you just trust people to do what their job is, you should be surprised if they fuck it up. Or annoyed. But yeah, and that was the case in this. So.
And in terms of the album, it's pretty much chronological really with the film overall.
Pretty much. The songs we've sort of re-recorded and changed a bit of it, just so they made more sense as songs, because if you just, some of it's like a few seconds long or whatever, it wouldn't really make sense to put that out on a record. I think people would be quite annoyed with us if we did that, but they are sort of fully formed songs, that we've released.
Yeah. And you don't need to worry about sequencing, so done and dusted.
Not really, no, it's good.
That's alright.
Perfect.
But it even works as two sides. It works on vinyl. I was thinking about the side splitting and stuff.
I got mine today.
Is that right?
About that, yeah.
musically, Barry, in terms of your sort of toolbox, if you like, were there any particular instruments that you? I mean, I started like listening into things far too much. They just weren't actually true. So I was like, is that sentiment to sound like a Geiger counter? And it's not. It's just, but you wonder to some extent if you have ways of. There's that sense of foreboding that Mogwai are very, very good at anyway. But do you ever think about
all
that?
All you need to do is like a 70s synthesizer and a minor chord and you're in.
You've got all the
that's not a
dregs you
secret.
want.
Anyone who plays a synthesizer in here will know that. Yeah, I mean, it's not really. We just use what we've got in the studio at the time to make something up, and I quite like how it's just a sort of snapshot of what we were doing at the time, and it's the same thing for this. Tons of vintage synths.
Yeah, is that it? Good to know. But
Easy.
were there any particular parts of the film that you saw that you really particularly composed the music for, as opposed to something where we mentioned earlier, whereby you gave an imagining to Mark and he put it to the film? Did it work the other way around at any sort of notable points?
I don't know, I don't think so. Not
I
really.
don't think so. Obviously, once you got into the studio, it was very carefully tailored to the picture, but the initial sketches were more free-forming than that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way of working, because there's always a danger of being too literal, and you just think if you're overthinking something, so when it's sort of emails and Dropboxes, and then it's all quite free.
Yeah.
And you're going to be playing this live along with, as well as the album, the DVD, and the film screenings. Mogwai are going to be playing this live as well. How does that work? Do you have to then relearn the soundtrack version, not the album?
We're still talking about it just now. I think we'll probably, because there's quite a lot of hard cuts in the film and stuff like that, and it was quite difficult when we were actually recording it to get some of the stuff. You know how there's a sort of, if there's any music in the film which clashes with the key, we were trying to work around that as well. So we're not really sure.
There's some existing
There's one
music,
part where it does actually, it bends, we had to sort of bend the music up a little bit.
I remember Stuart there, as a Jew, saying, "Oh God, we hate that piece of jazz." See, I personally like music on music occasionally.
I know,
it pulls you in different directions, but I can understand from your point of view it's horrible, But we did keep the jazz pieces right down in the mix, so you could hardly hear them.
So we're still not sure if we're going to do the proper album versions or we're going to change it, because when we did the Zidane thing, we actually kind of had to rework the whole thing, because as a live thing it didn't really work just playing what we saw on the DVD version of it, or the film version. So there'll be a bit of work to do.
And there are, although there's not, as you see, some overarching narrative in the whole film, there are these snippets that are key to so you have to weave your way to get around them.